Hello, everyone. I'm Jamin Shively, and I'm here with my colleague and co-host, Michael. How you doing, Michael?
Doing well. Good to see you, Jamin, here in the south of France.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great to see you too. All right. Well, this is our first hangout on a series that we call "Whole World: A Teleological Taxonomy." And so we're going to start with the concept of a whole world. What do we mean by a whole world? What are we aiming to achieve? Um, and then we'll kind of break out the taxonomy from there. Or what are your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I say we start from the top, just introducing what a whole world is or what it can be, what we mean by that, what we can and can't mean by that, and how that lends itself to what we're calling a teleological taxonomy, which is, in a sense, a mapping of the whole world.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, so a whole world. So whole, healthy, health, holistic, wholeness, integrity. Well, not integrity, but all those words that kind of sound. They all come from the same Latin root. Maybe you could tell us a little about that, Michael.
Well, whole and heal, as in health,
Yeah,
come from the same root. So what we're really talking about here is how to heal the world.
yeah,
A world that's fragmented, and in some ways sick.
in many ways sick. In many ways sick. That's sort of like that's sort of the giant elephant in the room. That I think it's worth taking a moment to talking about why we don't talk about this as a society, as a human society. In general, we don't really spend a lot of time talking about how broken everything is. And I think that the main reason for that is that most of us are running around just focusing on how do I meet the needs of myself and my family, not necessarily actual needs, but perceived needs for status, needs of accumulating wealth, and all these needs that we were trained to have. And the reason I bring this up is I was having a conversation the other day about how we don't you don't hear people talking about all the world's problems as a whole and how to solve them as a whole so that we have a whole world. I mean, so whole world goes hand in hand with how do you achieve it, and that goes hand in hand with how do we solve all of our problems and realize our these vast untapped opportunities, such as the opportunity of growing and evolving collective intelligence, precisely to facilitate and drive such transformations, which are going to need a lot of intelligence to achieve. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think holistic. You brought out another core meaning of the word that we'll be using, because, of course, to be whole is to be holistic. So that's the approach we're taking.
Yeah, yeah, right. So anyway, I'm just pointing out that whole world it's not really part of our vocabulary, and I think it's precisely because we have a certain resistance, we as humans have a certain resistance to trying to take on problems that we feel are just way beyond our scope, right? Or way beyond our power. So we just kind of focus on what we can do and hope that it'll all work out. And the great tragedy is it's not all working out. So we do need to take a broader perspective and say, okay, what would a whole world look like? It's kind of like that. Whoever the author of Alice in Wonderland was, I'm blanking on his name for the moment, but he said if you don't have a direction, any path will take you there. So we need a direction, and whole world is what we're calling. It's the placeholder for that direction, and that's exactly what we need to articulate.
And I suppose this is as good time as any to bring up, what potentially, as the philosopher is always thinking ahead of what could a counter argument be, well, what do you mean by whole world? Because everybody has their own meaning. I think in this case, one of the, we're not necessarily using this word, at least at this point, in some sort of metaphysical sense. It's more like the doctor, right, who does no harm, and who has a job that we all understand very well, what it is, and the doctor has the task of caring for our health, physical health, mental health, you name it. And so as we're looking for new medicines, right, modes of healthcare, these sorts of things, we're striving not only to heal, the most number of patients, kind of a utilitarian point approach, but we're also the field of medicine itself is becoming more whole as we fill in the gaps of our knowledge, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So it's sort of like,
he says as he smokes a J.
Exactly. So it's sort of like, a family doctor for the planet, holistic health for the planet. We need that function. So what I'm thinking is, think of it as just sort of like a virtual family doctor, but for the entire planet. It does its annual checkup. It looks here and here and here. It does no harm. I think that's a good metaphor.
Yeah. And some people could say, well, yeah, that's the Western approach to medicine, blah, blah, blah. But we're not necessarily saying that it has to be, the Western versus the Eastern, right? We're dealing here with West meets East, meets North, meets South. It's a whole, it's a holistic approach to health, which is, something of an oxymoron or redundant or something. But I think when you speak about it in these terms and you draw attention to the etymology of the word, where it comes from, the root of the word, you see that, in fact, even the notion of whole world itself is a topic for conversations that we're having, which contains any number of platforms and programs, to achieve that end. And so I think there you get a good sense of how it all comes together, and how it's all reintegrated on a higher level, right? A higher level of thinking, into a greater whole, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I just got a thought, which is, my first impulse is, hey, let's define whole world before we start to build out a teleological taxonomy that whole world kind of fans out into. Let me just talk just for a few seconds about what we mean by that. You're the one who taught me the term teleological taxonomy, after all. So if whole world is the aim, or the telos, right, that we want to achieve, that's the goal, however defined or undefined at the moment, that breaks out into two main sub-branches that we've identified. And here's the way I think about it. For the planet, for the world as a whole to be well, to be healthy, all people have to be well, and the planet, meaning the entire planet modulo the people, right, or minus the people, has to be well. So these two things, the combination of which equals the whole world, both of these things have to be well, people and the planet. And then for people to be well, you can imagine that node fanning out into a bunch of subnodes, being all the main basic and non-basic, but basically all the needs of people. What do people need? Well, they need food, they need shelter, they need healthcare, they need community, they need education, they need safety, they need, all these great things. And likewise for the planet needs a bunch of things. It needs an atmosphere that sustains life. It needs oceans that are, that sustain and support life, including photosynthesis and all this stuff. They need ecosystems that are healthy. They need blah, 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 blah. So we got whole world, planet, people, each of those fans out. And so that's just kind of a brief 2-minute introduction to teleological taxonomy. Basically, if check, if all these needs are met way down here, then that all rolls up to this notion of people being well. And if all these needs of the planet are being met, check, great. The planet is well. Well, are people well? Are planet well? Yep. Oh, great. Then we have a whole world. That's kind of an oversimplified way that I look at it. Let you get
well said. I don't think I could have said it better myself.
Thank you.
Yeah. And And I think even as we create this false dichotomy between people and the planet, right?
Yeah.
It's precisely because at a higher level, in fact, they're ranged under the topic of whole world. There are subtopics, and yet they're topics in their own right. But of course, they're not mutually exclusive. They're not. It's a false dichotomy,
Totally.
because and that's the way the teleological taxonomy works in practice. As we go deeper, we go from a topic to a subtopic, of which there will be, numbers of subtopics.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And in fact, like I said, now I want to go back to the point that I was starting to make, which was that, my initial impulse is to, well, let's fully define whole world before we even start to branch out. However, the paradox there is that it's in the branching out that we really start to get clarity on what we mean by a whole world. So I see sort of a dialectic between sort of like like fanning out before we're ready, before it's even defined, right?
Yes, that goes. So we can talk of whole world at a very high level, just taking whole world as the topic.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, and it's something of a paradox, it's certainly dialectical. The subtopics in turn are necessary in order to fully define what we mean by whole world. And by we, I mean everybody who's a part of this healing process. One way to put it is a way that a philosopher, James Carse, has put it, where he says essentially the vision, right, is to see all as one, and all to see as one.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. So whole world is really kind of the first part of that quote, which is to see all as one. Let's see the whole world as a whole world, as united, as integral, as complete, etc. That's kind of that's kind of where we got the term whole world. It was out of that perspective. And then the mission, one of the purposes or missions of collective intelligence is the second point, which is for all to come together and see as one united collective intelligence.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily happen from the point of view of the individual ego, right? However, that said, to the extent that we're a part of the whole, and that we participate in the whole, then I think that even as individuals, we begin to have this sense of wholeness. It's a paradigm shift, right? It's not me and mine, it's we and ours, and you start to think in terms of the other, one another, and I think it's in this dialogue, this dialectic, that even the individual becomes, in a sense, sort of a decentered part of a greater whole.
Yeah.
Around which we revolve.
Yeah. Exactly.
And and speaking of revolve, right? We can talk of the telos of people, right? In that topic as being revolution, right? That to bring about this sort of Copernican revolution, right, where the Earth is no longer the center of the universe, right? That we see the Earth itself as revolving around a star, which is in turn revolving it, and so on and so forth. And so then you just get in that paradigm, and in a sense, that's what we're doing here with collective intelligence. Yeah.
No, it has the explicit goal of uniting the world around a common aim, a common goal. And but what we're also talking about here is a common vision. In order to have that common goal, we need a common vision of the whole, so that we're all looking at it as one. And we're all of us are united in our looking at it. And I think part of that is people sharing their different perspectives. It's not so much that, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is the, you know, the official doctrine of how we're supposed to look at the world. You all need to look at it this way. No, 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 no. For all to see as one, that includes every single individual's voice being shared, having a place, having a space for them to share, and at least the possibility of everyone else in the world listening to that one. They'll have access to what they have to say. That's part of the seeing, is the parallax of all the different perspectives of individuals, of families, of communities, of whole peoples, of whole regions, of whole languages, all expressing their perspective. The synthesis of all those perspectives, or the set of all those perspectives, is all seeing as one.
Yeah, like one analogy would simply be, you know, we have two eyes, right? And the parallax between the two is what gives us depth perception.
Yeah.
And so that could be like, you know, my point of view, your point of view, together gives us a certain depth of vision that we otherwise wouldn't have.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's not just the straight addition of the two perspectives. It's actually seeing out of both perspectives at the same time, which is what enables the brain, the, you know, collective intelligence of all of these cells, and sensory organs and systems, and, you know, neurons and everything else. It enables this whole collective intelligence to see as one. And so I have the identity. I'm Jamin. I am one person. I'm not like, oh, this is the left eye. I see. Oh yeah, I see this, and I'm going to write down everything I see. And then the right eye says, well, I'm going to see this, and I see everything. No, no, no. The two are integrated.
Yes, they're integrated into what we're calling collective intelligence.
Exactly.
And so we welcome various perspectives, various schools of thought, disagreements.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's in that spirit that you know, we want to map the territory of collective intelligence. You know, one thing that comes to mind when you speak about the brain, right, is that you can think of collective intelligence as a neural network of nodes, right? Because one way to refer to these various topics, subtopics, are various nodes, or you know, neurons, or whatever. But it's in the relationship, sort of the firing that happens between the connections between. Where there's sort of this spark of intelligence.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, and then there's a perfect analogy with the integrated circuit. You have all of these transistors, which can store either a 0 or a 1, very analogous to like the single neuron just hanging out there. Well, I can either be activated or not, or I don't even know what the states of a neuron can be, but it's something analogous. And and so, but it's really the integrated circuit where you bring together all these transistors, each of which on their own is just like, you know, duh, I can either be 0 or I can be 1. I mean, it's not exactly the most, you know, I don't even know if you can describe any. Well, I guess it is sort of a unit of intelligence, because it can store information. The 0 or 1 information is a part of intelligence. Memory is a part of intelligence. But anyway, the larger point is there's just such a great parallel between the artificial intelligence that's created with an integrated circuit and the human intelligence, which is created by the integration of neurons into a brain. But then by extension, hey, you know, just like you can take whole integrated circuits, take multiple integrated circuits and build, you know, a supercomputer out of those and other components. What we're talking about is creating a superhumanity by integrating, taking whole, you know, integrated circuit, the integrated circuit that is my brain, you know, bolting that into, you know, a larger matrix of minds, and creating an integrated humanity, which is a part of a whole world.
Yes.
So, man, so we're off to a really great start with this. I'm starting to like think of other related topics and wondering whether we break those out as their own, you know, or
let's do that. I think one more thing I want to say at this juncture, since we're talking at such a high level,
yeah,
you know, about whole world itself as
yeah,
a topic, and the, you know, the teleological taxonomy of which it's comprised,
yeah,
is it's a sort of ecological framework, right? Or eco in the sense of house, which comes from the Greek,
yeah,
that represents the planet, right?
yeah,
But then you have eco in the sense of economy that represents people. And so you have ecology and economy that together need to be whole in order to make up a whole world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So eco is home. The whole world at the very top is the whole house. The whole home needs to be well, needs to have integrity, right?
Yeah.
And therefore its parts all need to have integrity. So there's that pulsating dialectic between the whole, the parts, the whole, the parts, because you know, for so many purposes, it's helpful to break it down into its parts and like zoom into a particular part. But at the same time, I think it's equally important that we never lose track of the whole, of which this part is merely a part, right? So it's kind of a paradox that is just part of, you know, what there is to deal with. I don't know how else to say it. Right?
To synthesize.
To synthesize, or simply be at peace with, you know, the yin yang, the, you know, the
Yes.
dichotomy, the false dichotomy.
And having whole world at the top of the teleological taxonomy, right, as the telos, gives all of the other topics their telos. They're derived from this telos, and from which they derive their meaning, and which in turn enrich the meaning of whole world itself.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel really good about you know, this introductory you know, video recording on whole world as a topic.
Yeah.
And with the holistic approach and the way we're, you know, mapping, so to speak, a sort of a collective cognitive mapping of the territory. And I think as we say, praxis makes perfect, right? As we, you know, go deeper into the taxonomy, I think it's by doing, right, being active, active participants in the process, that we really get a feel for how what we're doing is a meaningful part of a greater whole, even though we may be working in specialized subjects.
Yeah, yeah. Totally, totally. All right. Well, very good. So should we call it a wrap for this first?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Well, so this first video conference on the topic of whole world is just the first of a series, and so we'll organize these in a series, so you'll be able to watch the next one and the next one after that, but also have access to the entire series. If you want to root down to this very first one, you'll always be able to, because it'll be stored. So, well, great. Well, great work, Michael. Thank you so much, and thank you all for watching and listening.
Thank you.
Arigato. Arigato. Okay. See you next time.
See you.